everyone, my name is Mizuho. I am a library officer from City of Kingston, and this is my husband Brian. As a part of multicultural cooking series, my husband will cook a traditional Chinese dish today. So I'll pass it on to you.
Great, thank you very much. Hi everyone, so my name is Brian. I was born and sort of grew up in China. So the dish I will be cooking today is called, in English it's called twice cooked pork. In Chinese it's called huíguōròu. Basically means the pork is going to be cooked twice, and you see why as I start cooking. Here are the fresh ingredients you need to cook this dish. Here are the sauces that we'll need to cook this dish. So starting from the left, so that is the sweet bean paste. So in Chinese it's called Tianmian, and next to that is the soy sauce. So it is the light version of the soy sauce. So these two are the compulsory ingredients that you will need to cook this dish. The remaining three are optional. It's good to have. So the one in the front is called the broad bean paste, or in Chinese it's called Doubanjiang. So that's a very savory dish. Can just add a little bit of chili, a little bit of saltiness into the dish. Behind that is the Sichuan peppercorn, and the bottle on the right is the Chinese cooking wine. So if you don't have the Chinese cooking wine, beer or sherry or any alcohol will do actually. So all of these ingredients you can find it in your local Asian grocery store. So we're gonna start by cooking the pork once. So the first time when we cook the pork is basically to poach it, to put it in the boiled water. So I have some water in this pot. So ideally you want, depending on the size of your pot, you want to have enough water to cover the pork, depending on how thick your pork is. So hard for me to tell you the exact amount. So I have about, for a pot of this size, I have about 1.2 or 3 liters of pork. So what we're going to do is just pour some Chinese cooking wine in it. Don't have to be like an exact amount, just just put a little bit of wine in there. And then remember the garlic that this is the ginger. So remember the ginger that we sliced early on. So just put the gingers in there. And for the spring onion, so just pick 1 or 2 of them and then cut the root bit. And then into this about 3 centimeter, around 3 centimeter long, and then put it into that water as well. And then lastly, this is where the Sichuan pepper comes into play. Just have a small handful of Sichuan pepper. So I think in my hand there's about like 15 to 20 of them. And just put them in there. And I often just put the pork in there as well when the water is cold. Doesn't really matter if you feel like putting in the hot water. You can do that as well. So put it in there, and I'm just gonna put it on the stove. So because the pork we're using today is a little bit thick, so I reckon after the water becomes boiling, it'll take about 5 minutes for the pork to cook through completely. So in the meanwhile, I'm just going to prepare the vegetables. So we'll start. I'm just going to move this aside. Yeah. So we'll start by preparing the spring onions. It's very simple and straightforward. We're just going to dice it up. The more traditional way, I wouldn't say traditional, but the quicker way of cooking is to, rather than dice it just straight away, dice it up, you actually cut it diagonally. So let me show you what this looks like. So if you cut it into a shape like this, I'm not sure if you can see it properly. So this will allow the spring onion to be cooked quicker. So we're just going to cut all the spring onions. So next up is the capsicum. So I'm just gonna remove the core first before I cut into the shape. So obviously you can cut it into like a square shape, about half a centimeter, the width and the length. But in Chinese cooking, a lot of times we just don't even bother to cut it. So you can simply just use your hands to break them apart into like shapes like that. Right. So next up, we're gonna have to process the ginger and garlic. So this is pretty straightforward. So for the garlic, let's just thinly slice it. Same for the ginger. Because the shape is like an oval, so I'm probably gonna cut in the middle and then thinly slice it. So by the way, all the amount of ingredients. So this is based on a serve two, because it's just me and my wife. Feel free to adjust the amount of ingredients. If you like garlic, feel free to put like another 2 cloves. And if you're not a big fan of pork, we can reduce the amount of pork. But pork is kind of you kind of have to have pork to have twice cooked pork, right? So, all right, okay, perfect. So now that this piece of pork has been cooked there for 5-6 minutes, I don't think it's 100% cooked through, but that's fine. So I'm just gonna have to thinly slice this pork. But before we start, I'm gonna have to put it in this. I have a bowl of cold water because this is it's very hot at the moment. It's impossible for me to cut it. So just gonna soak it in the cold water to cool it down a little bit. The more traditional way of cooking it is that you put it in the cold water and you put it in the fridge for about 2 hours. But today I'm just gonna soak it just to cool down the surface so that I can start cutting it. So what I'll do is I'll just grab some paper towel and just carefully wipe it out, just soak up all the water on this piece of pork. So our aim is to slice it as thinly as possible, and at the same time maintain a width of around 2 centimeters, I'll say. But this one obviously is quite thick and wide, this chunk of meat. So what I'll do is I'll cut it in the middle and then I'll start slicing it. Oh, by the way, when you slice the pork, try to keep the skin side down, because if you cut it from the skin, it's really difficult to cut through. But if you cut from the side without the skin, it becomes a lot easier to cut. So before we start stirring the pork and the veggies, we'll have to make the sauce. So this is that sweet soybean paste that I was talking about earlier. So we will need 2 tablespoons of this. It's 1. And 2. Perfect. We'll also need just 1 tablespoon of soy sauce. And just give them a gentle stir, so just to mix them up really well. So this is what it looks like. Great. So now we're gonna do the second and the final cook of the pork. So first thing is to heat up the wok. Now that I can see, not sure if you can see, is I start to see smoke coming out of the wok. So I will turn on the fan and add some oil. Now I can see the smoke is getting really heavy, so basically this is a sign that the oil is start heating up, and we want it to be really hot when we put the pork in there. So it's gonna make a lot of sound when I put the pork in there. You don't have to add any salt and peppers and you know, all that kind of stuff, because the soybean paste that we're going to add is actually quite salty by itself. So we're trying to reduce the salt intake basically. Now that, from what I can see, there's no pink anymore. So this is the point where I typically add the gingers and garlic. So we're just gonna keep stir fry this until the point where the thinly sliced pork belly starts to curl. So that basically means it starts losing water, it becomes a little bit dry. So that's where we're gonna add all the vegetables in there. Great. So now that I start to see some of the really thin ones start curling up, so this is where I'm going to add this savory version of the soybean paste. What I'll do next is I'll put the red capsicum in there first, because capsicum takes slightly longer than spring onion for it to be cooked. We'll stir fry the capsicum for about 30 seconds. And then I'll put the spring onion into it. Okay, so the last step of the dish is this the sauce we mixed just before we start cooking. So the sweet soybean paste and the soy sauce. So just gonna give them a quick stir and put everything into the wok. And that's it, we're done.